we're going to be talking about factors and multiples. So let's start with that. What are factors and multiples? So first of all, we're going to be talking about factors. So a factor is another number, a number in multiplication that makes up another number, and that number should divide equally with no remainders. And that's what a factor is. In other words, say we had a question like, what are the factors of 12? Or actually, let's use a harder number. What are the factors of 42? What are the factors of 42? So what would we do to find the factors of 42? So first of all, we're going to start from 1 and go in order from there. So 1 is going to be a factor of every number because 1 goes into every number. And let's look at 2 since we're already done with 1. So 2. How would we find out if 2 is a factor of 42? We would divide 42 by 2. And if we divided, we would get an answer of 21. And since we have no remainders, so we have 21, just showing you here. And we get no remainders at all, right? We get a whole number as our answer. That means that 2 is a factor of 42. And 21 would also be a factor of 42, because if we divided 42 by 21, we would get an answer of 2, which is also a whole number. So these two numbers would be factors of 42. Now let's look at 3. So let's try to divide 42 by 3. So 42 divided by 3, and goes in 1, subtract to bring the next number down. Okay, so now we end up with no remainder, and we end up with a whole number as a quotient. So that means 3 is a factor of 42, and so is 14. So 14 is also going to be a factor of 42. And you put it in order, so that's why I'm putting the bigger numbers on this side and the smaller numbers on this side. And also 42 would also be a factor of 42 because it's obviously the same number. And the factorization of a number would stop when we stop at itself. 42 is the same as 42, right? So when we stop at the same number, that means that's the end. There aren't any more factors after that. So now let's look at 4. Let's see if 4 is divisible. And 42 is divisible by 4. So we have 42 divided by 4. 4 goes into 4 once. Subtract. And we get 2 as a remainder. So since we get a number as a remainder, that means that 4 is not a factor of 42. So we skip that number, move on to the next number. 5. Is 5 a factor of 42? And you would divide, and if it has a remainder, then it's not a factor. And you would just keep going on and on like that. But since I already know the factors of 42, I'm just going to write them down really quickly here. So the rest of the factors of 42 would be 6, 7, and the 14, 21, and 42. And these would be the factors of 42. So that's how you would find out the factors of a number. Okay, so now that we know what factors are, let's look further into the topic. So there's two types of numbers called composite and prime numbers, and these are basically like two types of factors. So the reason they relate to factors is, so let's start with composite first. So composite numbers are, so we have composite numbers. So composite numbers are numbers that have more than 2 factors. So let's use a number, like for example, we'll use a number 24. So now we know if we listed the factors of this number, we know that 1 is a factor of 24. And if we listed all the other numbers, we would get 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, and we have 12 and 24. And these would be the factors of 24. And this would be a composite number, because if we counted all of the factors, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 factors, and 8 is more than 2 factors. So this would be a composite number. Okay, so now let's talk about prime numbers. So a prime number is a number that has only 2 factors. And those 2 factors is 1 and itself. So for example, if we used the number 5 as an example, so 5, we see that 5 only has 2 factors, 1 and 5. So the factors of 5 are 1 and itself, because 5 and 5 are the same. Only 2 factors, so that means that 5 is a prime number. So now we know what factors are and the 2 types of factors. Okay, so now that we know what factors are, let's talk about multiples. So what is a multiple? So multiples is a number that comes in the times table. So for example, if I listed out the times table of 3, so we would do 3 times 1, 3 times 2, 3 times 3, 3 times 4, 3 times 5. All of these are the 3 times tables. And if I write the answers, it would be 3, 6, 9, 12, and 15. So these numbers that I've written in blue, all of these numbers, these are the multiples of 3, because we're using the 3 times table. And these are the answers of the multiplications. So these would be the multiples of 3. And if you look at the multiples, you see that it's kind of going in a pattern. You're counting by 3. So 3 plus 3 is 6, 6 plus 3 is 9, 9 plus 3 is 12, 12 plus 3 is 15. So basically, you're just counting by whatever number they tell you to. So if they tell you to tell the multiples of 5, you're just counting by 5s. And if they tell you to tell the multiples of 8, you're just counting by 8. So that's just a trick that you can just keep in mind when you're working with multiples. And you would just keep on going until how much ever number your teacher or the question tells you to do. So if the question said list the multiples of 3 until 5, so I would list the multiples of 3 until I reach the 5th. And 3 would also count as a multiple. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I would list it 5 times. And that's what a multiple is. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe to my channel. And comment down below what questions you have and what videos you guys want to see next. And I'll see you guys all next time. Bye!